Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody inside and outside the ballpark to the Noved podcast. We are currently on episode 78 of the podcast. I'm your host, NovedPlayer, and today we have an amazing creator who's been around the platform for a very long time. We have the owner of many different amazing game worlds, recreated game show worlds, I should say, created here inside of VRChat. We have GSGenesis. Genesis, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
I am very well, Noved. Thank you for having me on this.
Yeah, of course. Well, for the general listening audience, what exactly do you do inside of VRChat?
Well, for the record, I'm kind of the self-proclaimed pioneer of game shows in VRChat. That's kind of my official kind of self-claimed title. What I've done since 2018 is I've recreated a whole host of fully functional game show sets in VRChat. What I've done is I've recreated a bunch of shows like Family Feud, Jeopardy, Press Your Luck, Wheel of Fortune, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and a lot of others too. Originally, they were just kind of like this personal passion project, but eventually it evolved into my hobby, in a sense, in VRChat. It's kind of become my second personality.
Absolutely. So
kind of primary in a sense as well.
Yeah, of course. I guess kind of one of the very first questions I want to ask in that case, so what kind of got you started into VRChat in the first place? Like, what kind of brought you into VRChat?
That, because I have some friends who played it way back in the day. I think 2017, 2018, I was part of a group of small friends, a very small group of friends I met through a game called Gary's Mod. Kind of showing that a little bit, but I don't play it anymore. But they got into VRChat when it kind of started taking off in late 2017, and then eventually I kind of got pulled into it. And the story with that behind the game show stuff kind of intertwined with me finding out about VRChat, because before that even happened, I learned that my mother was on Jeopardy 1 year before I was born, approximately in 1998. So she was on the show when Alex Trebek was still hosting that sushi bar set, as you may know it as. And Alex Trebek still has mustache. My mom was on the show in October 98. I think it was October 28th, 1998. Yeah, that sounds about right. And she played the game, and she had her whole interview done. She played well. She was leading by $100 going into the final Jeopardy round. Then the category was geographic wordplay. So I assume you never heard of that category. Of course, it was like the first time it ever appeared. The answer was, the name of this Asian country contains the name of a Mediterranean volcano. Her challengers got the right question, which was, what is Vietnam? Because it contains the letters E-T-N-A in that order in Vietnam, spelling Etna as in Mount Etna. My mother did not get the right question and she lost. I learned about that game when I was going into like middle high school era. I went to a special school because I'm on the autism spectrum. And of course, being in a school like that, you're around a lot of kids who are different. And frankly, when you're really passionate about stuff, you can be bullied a lot. And I was a lot. In fact, pretty much every day by a lot of the kids who were there. But that didn't stop me from pursuing kind of this game show passion where my mom was not only on Jeopardy, but also on Figure It Out with my sister, my eldest sister, around the same time that episode of Jeopardy premiered. And they won that one, of course. So I'll let you look it up if you find it. But when I was near the end of middle school in that special school, I created a game of Jeopardy in PowerPoint. You know, those school-based Jeopardy PowerPoint games or whatever they are that aren't really too special, like simple. You just click a button and it pops up with a question or answer, whatever. Mine was different because it actually tried to recreate the look of the show from that first season in syndication very faithfully, with the logos, the looks, the fonts, colors, sets, sounds, music, everything. It was actually very accurate to the show in PowerPoint form. But again, because the kids were very biased and very begrudging toward me, it didn't really work out. Not until high school and my last year, when I did a dual enrollment program with a local community college. I was with a new group of kids, fresh-faced college kids. I think they were freshmen. And I did a class in Microsoft Office for my dual enrollment course. And I did it again there, theming after the dual enrollment course in MS Office, and it was actually very well received. People loved it.
Hell yeah.
And then I also was doing a lot of stuff with SketchUp at the time, an app called Trimble SketchUp, which is basically, as of kind thing, way of saying it, it's like the MS Paint of 3D modeling. It's mostly used for architectural design, where people design buildings and structures, but you can also do 3D models in it very easily. Like The McDonald's world that VRGen made and still makes was originally made in SketchUp. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
Oh,
But
wow.
I use it to this day to make all my game show worlds. And I used it in the beginning to make a bunch of simple models, and then I learned about VRChat and how I can do with it. Honestly, a few different methods compared to how I do them now, but as they say, from that point, the rest is history.
Yeah, for sure. And, obviously, going through all the years, you've been around for a long time, so what kind of made you want to create things in VR in the first place? Obviously you got into VR with a bunch of friends through Gary's mod, but what kind of made you want to start actually creating stuff inside of VRChat?
It was kind of the passion that germinated into what we know today. So when I began learning about the stuff you can make and how kind of easy it is, especially with that SDK2 originally it was, which is actually going to be going away soon, unfortunately, but you move on in a sense. But I learned about SDK2 and how easy it is to make this stuff. So eventually I learned how to export my SketchUp models to FBXs, learned the logic of SDK2, how easy it was to drag and drop logic. Animators, I learned very quickly. Basically, I was self-taught. And I never really thought of it that much at the time, but I guess what drove me to make these shows is just the love of the genre and how to bring an experience that is virtually inaccessible to so many people, fans, former contestants, people who are ineligible, and make it accessible this way. So that's kind of how it started. And originally, the sets were not well detailed at all. I just wanted to get them created and functional. The first two worlds I made were Jeopardy and Second Chance. Obviously, Jeopardy being the first season of syndication, and Second Chance was the predecessor to Press Your Luck by about 6 years by the same person who made it, Bill Carruthers, and was on a different network compared to the one we know today. But both were kind of done around the same time. I don't know exactly which one came first officially. So Second Chance was really the first one that worked because I had the logic, I had the scoreboards, and I had the animations all worked out. So that was, but again, both worlds were kind of privated officially at first, but then I kind of warmed up to it over time, making them public. So yeah, that's how it started.
No, fair. And obviously, with how many game worlds, you've made, representing different game shows and stuff, I guess one of the bigger questions in this regard. So obviously, there's many different types of worlds inside of VRChat. So what kind of, what gave you the spark of, recreating all these game shows? Obviously, there's a little bit of family history, and going into VRChat from Gary's mod, but what kind of sparked like specifically game shows?
I guess just because how interested I was over time with the genre. Again, it was kind of answered, but I can go into more detail here. So, of course, game shows, this is a very big statement to say. Game shows are basically, they're more than a pastime on television. They're basically an escape from real world because of all the political stuff, the real world events, and all this drama that's going on in the real world. For about 30 minutes or more, game shows offer an escape from all that. And I want to make sure I can bring that experience to people for at least that certain amount of time, even more than that amount of time if people play it a lot. So my goal nowadays is to provide the experience and also to preserve television history, especially because those older sets and those older formats don't exist anymore, especially in real life. For example, Jeopardy was taped its first season in Metro Media Square in the studios of KTTV in Los Angeles. And now, of course, that's occupied now by a news station for Fox News, but the actual set, those pieces, and the basic studio in general is virtually gone, especially because it's taped now at Sony Pictures Studios. So what I do, I use every known photo, video, screen cap, anything I can find to recreate it virtually one-to-one, which is something unheard of in these recreations, and I've kind of inspired others to do so.
Mm-hmm. No, I would say, yeah, because, with your worlds, they're, from what I've seen over the years of me being alive, when it comes to those shows, they are very accurate, to say the least. Like it's really impressive, Indeed. To say the least.
Indeed, they are.
So I guess kind of one of the things, because obviously with each game show, right, it takes time to produce, and it takes a lot of, knowledge with, Unity or Blender, depending on, world creators, or Sketchfab, whatever the case. So one of the questions I want to ask, because obviously with all these worlds, which one took the longest when it came to like production side of things?
I think that, again, all the worlds kind of are ongoing because I'm always updating them. But I think the longest one production-wise and updating would have to be Press Your Luck. That would be the winner. because of all the detail I continue to put in that world and everything I update. Actually, I updated it, I think, yesterday at the time this is being taped to reflect a few new things. I updated some of the logos based on some new source material I found. But in a sense, Press Look got the most attention to detail, I think. And part of it came from every little thing, everywhere, across the whole world. So I can go a little bit of detail. Sorry if I kind of deviate on this a little bit about the detail, but that's okay. Hopefully have some time.
Go for it.
But as you know, Press Your Luck originally aired on CBS in September 1983, and it was taped in the Television City Studios complex in Los Angeles, California, where Price is Right used to tape until recently. It was originally taped in Studio 33, where Price is Right also taped, and was known as the Bob Barker Studio in recent years. And I actually managed to recreate that studio very well recently, and including other worlds like Family Feud and Doma Fox's Pyramid. And that studio, the recent version, is extremely accurate, at least to my eye, as how it actually looked in real life. It has the actual counted seats in the right positions, the actual shape of the stage. It's got the booth in the back. It's got the CBS curtains with the eyes on them. It looks phenomenal. Then, of course, you have the big board and those light frames, all highly detailed. You got the actual fading slides. You got the light borders that flash and fade in and out briefly. You have the contestant console that spins. You got the prismatic glass panels. The actual prismatic glass panel textures from the actual show. You have the whammy animations used from the actual show, the master tapes that actually play frame to frame and pretty much exactly as they do on the show, the master tape sound effects as well. You have, and one thing that is different actually about that show is how it functions very slightly, because there's a bit of story. I'm sure you know the story of Michael Larson on Press Your Luck, who memorized the patterns of the original big board back in 1984, which then prompted him to change things, and he won over $100,000 in cash and prizes, and they actually made a movie about it recently too, back in April, and that was released. I thought it was okay. I know Rick Stern, who worked the original, didn't think it was so good, but I kind of agree with him on that actually. But then they changed the patterns later that year to be 32 patterns of 18 steps, but my board, originally in SDK2, it did have the 5 Larson patterns, but when Udon came around, I changed it to a completely random sequence. You cannot Larson the game.
That's good. I was like, yeah, it's definitely a good thing to not be able to find those patterns, especially with game shows like that.
No. I think someone did one time, and someone tried at least early on, and then they got whammy because of the latency. That is always a killer.
That's the worst.
Indeed, yeah. Especially because of SDK2.
Yeah, no, of course. And a lot of game worlds, that's usually a common thing with VR games, latency and different connections and stuff.
Yeah, latency and lag. But yeah, SDK2, it was horrendously bad on latency between our players with animators. But with Udon and the special variables they have, it looks a lot smoother with the randomized board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because obviously, with the Press Your Luck, you have a few different variants of Press Your Luck. Like you have the original, you also do have, the very first episode, as well as the VR pilot version.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, and I believe there's another one I remember correctly.
It's kind of called Unmade Syndicated, because apparently there's, I don't know if it's true, but apparently Bill Cross tried to sell the series into syndication in '85. That's kind of what it's based on, but it can also be toggled to the '85 CBS era, and that's what we do the most in that world. But yeah, the pilot looks differently as well, because it has the original pilot logo with the blocky letters, the Keith Mansfield flash music, slightly different look, different doll bears. The logic is updated to reflect that, and it also has the pilot whammy animation. And actually, there's a fun fact I can mention right now. That whammy animation you see in that world is a master tape transfer, because it was uploaded to YouTube recently, actually.
Oh, wow.
So that's a raw tape. I think it's from a Laserdisc, but I don't know for sure. It might be a beta tape or whatever that's high quality. It might be a Laserdisc because of the specs that look like a laser rod, but I have no idea. That's up to the staff to determine and mention. But that actual animation, because the pilot for Press Your Luck has so far been in very low quality at the time this is being taped. Very low sound, fuzzy video, especially that whammy animation is hard to tell. But that pilot whammy that was unveiled from the raw tape, blue background and all, that is a clean transfer. And I was able to get that, match it frame by frame, source the audio perfectly, and it actually looks good in that world. Kind of the closest thing you're going to get to a master quality transfer overall for a whole pilot in that one world.
No, for sure. And obviously, Obviously there's a lot of work with these worlds and stuff, obviously with all the different versions of all the different worlds you made. Obviously we've talked about Press Your Luck, but obviously there's also, Jeopardy, which you've made multiple different variants, going through the different seasons.
Correct.
And it's definitely a crazy thing, to say the least. Having all these different, like, I know you had the seasons, you had like the pilot version, the NES edition. So I guess kind of one of the questions I want to ask, because obviously you've went through all of these seasons and stuff, like watching them all and getting the inspiration to make them into VR. So how was the process, for specifically Jeopardy? How was the process like, kind of for the general listening audience who may not know, what was kind of the process of going through each season and, just putting it one-to-one, within the worlds?
That depends on which season it is. Of course, the base season was season 1, which had the red letters and the different podiums, the red neon tubes, slightly different gameplay as well, and tape Metro Media. The latest version, but because since it still has 2K2, I have to update it soon. But of course, that taped in KTLA eventually by season 2. The letters are changed, the board's slightly different, the podiums are new, slightly different platform, and different colors, of course. So all I have to do is really update the meshes and a bit of the logic, and I'm good. Well, at least it comes to different versions, but STK2 functioned a bit differently. I had to use materials and baked-in questions for just one game. But STK3 for the Season 1 main version has randomized categories. And each of them has their own set of questions and answers and whatever, so you can get a whole endless possibility of different types of games with those categories that you can get. So I'm going to carry that over to Season 2, 3... 7, I think, and maybe 9, which is the grid and sushi bar sets, hopefully soon if I can get them updated with their meshes especially too.
Oh, fair. Yeah, I'll say it's rather impressive to see all the different variants, from different years, because obviously, this Jeopardy especially has been around decades, many decades, and obviously,
Correct.
times have changed. Go ahead.
Sorry, in fact, it's actually been around much longer than we think. It actually debuted in 1964 on NBC. It's older than we think. The original version was with Art Fleming on that network. And of course, Merv kind of created it. Merv Griffin, of course, is who I'm mentioning. He created it in response to the quiz show scandals of the 50s, primarily from Jack Barry and Dan Enright, who created 21 and Tic-Tac-Doe. And his wife, Julianne, at the time, of course, conceived the give the question format to him and kind of threw him some quick answers at him, like 5,280. Merv said how many feet in a mile, or 79 Wistful Vista, that sort of thing. Then, like that, Merv got the idea.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeopardy isn't just with Alex Trebek, it was with Art as well, for 2 versions, one in 64, one in 78. And then, of course, obviously one you know well, in syndication since 84. And Ken Jennings, who is the 74-day champion in 2004, the Jeopardy GOAT, actually has carried on the tradition of host. And I think he does a great job.
No, yeah, it's definitely seen its age when it comes to Jeopardy. And it's still great to this day.
Indeed it is, yeah. And actually, one thing I want to mention about the variants as well, kind of get a little bit back on track, is it's not just pilots or different seasons. I also make custom variants. For example, one of the earliest versions of Jeopardy that had that was the seasonal variants. I made Halloween and Christmas editions, which are never really done on those shows. So I can add custom music, custom colors, different content, easily like that. And it's something that may add a few surprises in an existing world like I did for a person's birthday. Which is something that couldn't really be done that easily back in the day with those sets. They just had their set of colors and music. But because it's in VR, you can edit it very easily. It's like this weird what-if sort of thing. Well, what if it aired on Christmas or Valentine's Day or Halloween and it was decorated that way? It's kind of this remarkable thing you can do easily. I've had holiday variants of Press Your Luck and Second Chance. I had the VCAT edition of Press Your Luck and the Project Fest edition of Family Feud that all look very different colors and slight edits. It was really remarkable what I can do, and still can.
Absolutely, yeah, and all of which are absolutely well done, at least from what I've seen and have been a part of.
Yeah.
And obviously there's definitely different videos of these different variants as well, and we'll of course throw those on the screen as well. So kind of actually, since we're kind of talking about it, you've worked with different, communities and different creators when it comes to some of your worlds and, some of your events. So obviously, making these worlds, you started to build the community itself. So what what kind of inspired you to go into the, community side of things? Like, what kind of made you want to outreach like that?
It wasn't really that way so easily at first because I was worried I would lose control and people wouldn't understand. So I kept my worlds private and only hosted them on my own whim. But eventually, when people started getting word about, hey, this exists, and we really like to play, I eventually warmed up to the idea of putting them out, making sure people understand them as well, and eventually creating the group we know today as the Game Show Communities of VRChat. Originally went under some few different names, including just Game Show Community of VRChat. And then I pluralized it when other people were making their own groups, and we wanted to kind of recognize them. So we're now pluralized. And then we started building up a team. We have streamers, we have fellow content creators, we have some certain stars, in a sense, kind of, but also mostly. We also have very avid fans. We have people who look up to our work. We have fellow co-creators like Doma Fox and Nito Noku, who made Pyramid and the modern version of Countdown. And we also have some people we recognize and who recognize us in return. We have Drumsy, who actually has used some of my worlds in his videos since Sale of the Century for his Guess Game, and I'll Buy It For You. Even a custom version that I made exclusively for the kind of sequel, just for that video, believe it or not. And when Ilya was on the modern version of Millionaire for that rigged so it's only right video, if you remember that. We also have, who else? We have Minutes in Valhalla, who has done tremendous work, a VTuber fellow friend who appeared at the VCat Press Your Luck alongside. And also Chris Connie was an early person before he even did Project Fest. He remembers Hitman when it was still public. The Hitman, of course, the game show, not the video game. That barely lasted because I could not keep up with the content, and making videos for each new incarnation was a pain, so I had to delist it because I could not keep up with the work. We also have other map makers. We also have other streamers, like we have Slushy VRC, who actually help with a front page of Twitch event for Family Feud with operating the controls. And we have other known map makers, like, obviously, if you play VRChat, odds are you know who Jar is. Jar made a lot of tremendously popular PvP game worlds in VRChat Spaces is when I started playing in 2018. She has made worlds like Catch That Phrase, Magic Freeze Tags, the recent Snowball Showdown, but her most popular worlds are, of course, Audience Anarchy and, of course, the Murder series. I became friends with Jar as of 2 years ago, and she is a truly remarkable content creator. I value her work very much. I've valued it since the beginning. She's a truly tremendous world creator. And we've gotten very close as good friends since we met. Her friends are also very nice. I attend her game nights every other week. And we really recognize each other for what we do. And we are really good friends. And of course, I look up to Jar a lot when it comes to kind of inspire me to keep going when it comes to making this stuff. And I'm sure Jar inspires a lot of people. So I'd say, in case you're wondering who my biggest inspiration was, if you're going to ask that question later on, your answer already is Jar. She is one of a kind.
No, absolutely. And I know Jar does inspire quite a few world creators, especially game world creators. I would say
Indeed.
it's definitely amazing what Jar can do. Funny enough,
Indeed.
kind of a small tangent because we're talking about Jar. I didn't get to talk to them, but I was actually at Ferality Somna this year, and I was at one of the event panels, and they were just sitting like not even 2 feet away from me. I'm like, wait a minute. And I was muted. I'm like, is that freaking Jar? That's crazy. Like, it's small.
Lovely.
It's small world. I didn't get to talk to them. They bounced.
Indeed, yeah.
They bounced before the event started, but it was so cool to see them in VR.
Yeah,
and stuff.
she is a little elusive. She is very busy because she's working on a lot of new content. Now, obviously, I don't know all about it, and I couldn't disclose if I could. But Jar really has done a lot of hard work, and we commend her for it very much, especially with both awards she won at my friend's VRCA Community Awards, the VR Community Awards run by my friend VRC Puck, and she won the awards in both her nominations, and I'm really proud of her for that as well.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And kind of get back into the subject. We love you, Jar. But if you ever want to come on, hey, chair's open. But back to back in the topic, because obviously working with all these communities and creators, as well as giant organizations like PJKT and VCat.
Correct.
Obviously all the world variants and stuff. And you've done different shows with all these communities and stuff. So I guess one of the questions I want to ask, was there one in particular that you hold dearest to your heart? Like, what's probably your most favorite event to date when it comes to like your game shows?
Favorite event? I would say that would have to be the virtual market Press Your Luck for a couple reasons. Not only because Press Luck's my absolute favorite show by far, but because it was our first real event we did at a major VRChat affiliated event. Virtual Market's been around since, again, the same time I started playing, 2018, and been going very strong ever since. I've known Lund since I met him at Project Fest 2024. I met Chiaro-san, Hayatakaze, a lot of great people who work at VCAT. And when we got into VCAT 2024 winter, we were over the moon happy. My whole community and I and our friends and affiliates. And we got an event to do Press Your Luck at that VCAT, and it was tremendously successful. We had Midnights of Valhalla, Chris Connie, and Pablo's Corner, 3 fantastic VRChat community leads and representatives played the game, and it was all for charity. So, a little bit on that. We have worked before with the Starlight Children's Foundation for our Streams for Starlight, where we donate money during our game show events, especially during the Mario Day weeks. If you know those are a thing. And so we have donated to them before, but we at VCAT, we had our biggest donation, I believe. In one day, we donated. So if you know the episode well, you can watch it, but I can spoil a little bit. So Chris Connie won the game, a very, very tense competition all the way through between all 3 players. But Chris won the game with 11,671 in-game dollars. Now, what we did was we would max out at a certain amount for 10% of the winner's score, otherwise, minimum of $100, but we'd max out at 10,000 in-game dollars, which would translate to $1,000 maximum to donate, and we achieved that goal because of Chris's score. And Midnights of Valhalla chipped in 100 as well, so that was a big donation, and I'm still very happy we did that.
Absolutely. It's definitely crazy because I've seen that one, and I know Chris Connie, love you, buddy. I know he holds that. I know he holds that W very close.
Like a trophy.
yeah. He was very proud of it. I know he had mentioned during the PJKT versus VCAT event that was held this year in 2025 Project Fest. I know he had mentioned it there, but he's talked to me about it quite a few times. He was very happy to be a part of that.
Yeah, he was very happy, I bet.
Yeah, and Midnights of Valhalla and Pablo's Corner as well. Having all 3 of your those guests on the podcast, it's definitely some good star power in there when it comes to that. So obviously, working with all these creators and stuff, I guess, one of the questions, because obviously you've been doing it for so long, kind of going down through all the years, what does it feel like to have grown from when you started to now? Like, what's kind of the overall consensus, like, in the mind of yourself when it comes to how far you've came since?
It's kind of still ongoing, that feeling, but I really feel like I've grown a lot personally, mentally, and of course professionally. Obviously, a lot of things have changed since I first started, like my friends who play VRChat and sometimes don't anymore, the connections I've made or lost. But overall, one thing has remained the same, and that is the passion. It's only stayed the same, if not actually grown. I've done more worlds, I've done more work, I've gotten better at what I do. The general kind of overall thing hasn't really sunk in too much yet. It might very soon, but with the recognition I've been getting from various people all over VRChat, including sometimes VRChat itself, especially since I've been working with the community leaders group now and having connection with the official people and also other community members. I've met people through Club Zodiac, the owner of that, named Virgo for You. I met Mondo Cat. I met a lot of other great people through that community leaders group, and having that kind of recognition officially, kind of officially in a sense. I hope it gets there soon, but that kind of status as a recognized creator really feels very heartwarming, and it actually. Because especially when I was growing up in high school and middle school, especially, I did not feel respected at all. But now finally having this level of recognition, respect, and kind of, in a sense, redemption from who I used to be, in a sense, and even starting VRChat a little bit, is very much a positive thing. And it really makes me feel very strongly about not just what I do, but who I give the passion to and share it with.
Yeah, it's a very crazy thing, as a lot of people, because we're all gamers at the end of the day, right? We all play this VR social game, and a lot of people over the years, not to delve too much into this topic, but a lot of people do deal with bullying with middle school, high school, so on and so forth.
Yeah,
And it's always those people that create the most amazing things in this world.
Indeed, yeah.
It's a very it's a wholesome thing. I know there's a word for it. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. But it's a very wholesome, heartwarming thing.
Indeed.
Not necessarily like an underdog story. There's another phrase for it. Somebody in the comments
underestimated.
Some kind of, yeah, in a similar sense. Yes, that's kind of where I'm going with it.
Yeah. That's what some of the comments will point out for sure.
Yeah, comments. Get me in the comments.
Help us.
But hello everyone, real quick, just want to pause the episode right here. I want to thank you all so much for watching this far. If you're interested in, maybe watching some of my other content or enjoy what you're watching so far, feel free to hit that subscribe button. It does help me out a lot. And of course, if you're interested in some of the other events and, collaboration projects that I work with, feel free to join the VRChat group at noved.6608. We do put stuff on the calendar for future uploads, as well as many other events that we take part of. I will say, upcoming October 11th and 12th, I'm proud to announce that we are officially going to have the 2-year anniversary of the Noved Squad, where we'll have 2 whole days worth of performers for a charity event, all for the International Association for Suicide Prevention. Much more details will come at a later date. But if you're interested in that, make sure to join the VRChat group and join the Discord by looking at the link tree or in the VRChat group itself. But let's get back into the episode. Woo! It's definitely a crazy thing when it comes to all that, going through all that and, making something as crazy as 1-to-1 recreations of, popular TV show game worlds. So obviously, one of the bigger questions I wanted to ask, because obviously you've made so many different games over the years. Is there one game show in particular that you haven't done yet that's kind of been one, I guess, that you would love to see or maybe eventually create inside of VRChat?
That is one I can answer immediately. It is currently in the works. It's kind of stalled, unfortunately, because I've been busy with a lot of other stuff this year, including my Film Jam entry and my VCAT plans on a lot of our stuff, including my new part-time job, and now streaming on Twitch. But the world that is currently in the works I'm about to mention is one everyone loves. Everyone's looking forward to. It's been on the air for over 50 years. It is The Price is Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know a lot of people that would enjoy that one.
They would, yeah. So, and as such, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, because you mentioned Price is Right, I know you actually created a trailer for, the upcoming release of The Price is Right in VR. But yeah, so I guess, kind of tell us a little bit about some of the processes when it comes to that. I feel like you're going to mention something similar.
I am, yes. I'm going to mention exactly what you think. So Price is Right is basically that similar vein of game show where anyone can pick up and play, but it's going to be done very differently. The whole UI is going to be far more simple. There's not going to be a control console anymore. I'm using something called the auto host system, as I call it. And it's going to be based on the audience anarchy system that Jar made, where where it's going to be a bunch of prompts and generated by the UNI randomizer mostly and player input. It's not going to be a control console anymore. So we're going to have as many pricing games and prizes as we can in that world while still keeping it mobile compatible. It's going to be based on the 1986-ish era when Rod Roddy started announcing, as you know, from Press Your Luck. And he's also the longest lasting announcer on the show currently at the time. George Gray's catching up, though. But that nostalgic era really, I think, is the best era I can think of for The Price is Right. When Bob still had dark hair, especially. And rest in peace, Bob, of course. But, and of course, again, so why I did that later on. But Price is Right really is going to be a challenge because of that. Again, the auto host system, getting those prizes made, all the descriptions, the music, everything. The logic, it's gonna be a long journey. It might not get here in time for December, but if that happens, we can always push it back. It's always going to come out sooner rather than later, or better late than never, in a sense. But originally, when I tried to do Price is Right, I wanted to do it based on at least the latest Drew Carey version. But eventually, I had to ditch it because it was just too much with all the detail and the flashy colors and dynamic look. So I had to put it off and do Family Feud instead. But unfortunately, there was a bittersweet part to it. When Bob Barker sadly passed away I heard about during a game show panel at a convention I went to with a friend and was hosted by a friend. And it was Press Your Luck of all things as well during that panel. I heard about it during a game. It was called Retro World Expo. It was in 2013, and during one of the breaks, my friend who was hosting announced that Bob Barker sadly passed away. And I was like, oh. But the good thing about it was it gave me a spark to try and do Prices Right again. And this time I would do it based on Bob's era. Probably the best version of the era, which was, of course, mid to late 80s. So with that, I made much more progress. I actually have a world in testing for it. Obviously, still using the control panel, but it's making great progress. And of course, it's stalled, but I'm going to get back on it hopefully very soon when I finish my VCat events this year, if they happen.
Yeah, of course. And, it was very unfortunate for the world when he had passed. And, I did see the trailer prior to recording. And I'm definitely excited to see what exactly you come up with, especially since you mentioned, the whole randomizer system. That's very interesting. And I know it's a new thing for you when it comes to that, not having a control panel. So I'm very curious to see what you come up with on that.
I'm sure it'll sound very nice.
Yeah. I feel like you were gonna say something before I kept going. Sorry.
I was, yes. I was talking to another Bob, and convention connection, not related to VRChat much in any way. And I'm kind of leaning to it later, maybe with a later question. But I also actually met a real host at one point, a real game show host in real life.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it was also in 2023, but it wasn't Bob Barker. It was Bob Eubanks. So in case you don't know who he is, I can explain. He was the host of Trivia Trap, the CBS Card Sharks, Dream House, and NBC in 83, but he's most known as the host of the Newlywed Game since it started in 1966. And of course, he went on for a long time, hosted Revival in the late 90s, early 2000s, and since then he's kind of been laying low as like a kind of a game show icon. Obviously retired. But I met him. He's also done kind of cameo appearances on other stuff as well. Of course, he also worked with the Beatles when they came to America. I think on the Ed Sullivan Show, I think as well. And he did a lot of work with that. And he also, I think, did a bit of acting. But when I heard Bob was going to a convention called Rhode Island Comic Con, I knew I had to go meet him. So I dressed as a game show host, obviously based on Peter Markin's first episode of Press Your Luck, with kind of the green tartan style sport coat and the pinkish, dark pink tie. If you know the episode well, you probably know what I'm talking about. And I went and I met him there. Obviously, I waited by his booth for a while. He's very old now, but he still has a very good spark left in him. And I met him, and he's like, did we go to the same college together? I was like, and of course, I took it all well. And I had my tote with me, with my logo, my GSGenesis logo, of course, and all the shows I made up to that point in VRChat, and I was trying to talk about with him. I think he was interested, but he also said, none of my shows are on there. Because obviously, I didn't make Card Sharks. Doma made that one. I didn't make Trivia Trap. Oh, no, Doma made Trivia Trap, but I didn't make Newlywed Game yet. I thought about doing it. I might still do it. But yeah, Doma made Bob Eubanks as well. I mentioned that to him as well. But also, I got something signed by him as well. Now, this is kind of, sorry to go off on this tangent for quite a while.
You're fine.
But the iconic game show microphone used on a lot of these shows is called the Sony ECM51. It's a microphone from, I think, starting in the 60s or 70s, and it's been used by a lot of hosts on a lot of game shows. It's been used by Bob Barker and Gene Rayburn, most notably, on Price is Right and Match Game, the CBS Match Game, of course. And that microphone is very iconic. It's basically like a stick, like a magic wand style microphone. It's the most that little windscreen, like a little ball, and it telescopes and extends like that. So you can extend it, the stem or the neck, as long as short as you want. It's made of like metal. But that microphone is really iconic, but it's also very rare. It can fetch like a lot of money nowadays. But I found one on Etsy for only $50. And the original owner said it didn't work, but I actually managed to get it working. I put a fresh battery in it and a proper adapter, and it works. And it has the carrying case with it too. And I took that microphone and that carrying case with me, and I got the case signed by Bob Eubanks. And I think he says something like, "This is, I don't know when the last time I held one of these was." I don't know if he said that or not, but who knows? It's kind of this weird theory. I don't know. I don't remember a lot about the meeting, but meeting him was a joy and honor enough.
Yeah, no, of course. That's That's really cool. I mean, finding one on
Indeed.
Etsy for $50. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
First and foremost,
It's a steal, basically.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, getting it signed by, someone like him, that's another crazy thing that,
Indeed. Indeed, it is. Especially
definitely
because Bob is one
memorabilia.
of only. Indeed, because Bob is only one of 2 hosts were left from the 70s, because they're all kind of disappearing, because Chuck Woolery and Wink Martindale passed earlier this year. So the only 2 left from the 70s are Bob and a host named Jim Peck, who hosted Hot Seat and Press or Second Chance, and a substitute host for the Joker's Wild. And Bob's actually kind of from the 60s. So since there's kind of 1 host from the 60s left, and 2 from the 70s if you count Jim Peck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely crazy how many game shows there are out there when it comes to
Indeed.
game shows. I mean, funny enough, on a previous episode we had Jones and Italian and Evan the Floydian, who essentially, granted, it's more of a film, it's not an actual game show, but it's based off the old Survivor series. They created Sheba Squad Survivor, which is essentially Survivor.
Yeah, I've heard of
that. Yeah, it's phenomenal episodic series, still in works. I think they're on like episode 11 now. I think. Don't quote me on that. But
by the way, it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean they were nominated in Rain Dance, and has been doing crazy stuff. And from what I've heard, in post editor, feel free to throw a thing on the screen. I know there is another game show of Survivor. It's more based on actual Survivor. They're currently like looking for people to audition for it or whatever.
I actually heard about that too. The Ask Survivor VR, kind of like based on the actual Survivor. Obviously it gets affiliated with it, but close enough.
Right? Yeah. It is really cool. Yeah. I'll say it's really cool to see all these people wanting to create these game shows, and TV shows, in VR, because obviously, I feel like everybody, as a kid or a young teen, adult, whatever, they want to do these type of shows. They see this and they're like, oh, I would love to do that. Well, now they can with VR, with what you do and what some of these other creators do. It's a way that people can do these things and be fully immersed in it. Because obviously there's like the video games based off of these shows and stuff. Like I know Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Family Feud, I know has had some PlayStation and other console iterations. But to fully immerse yourself in that, it's a whole nother thing. It's a whole nother step.
Yes.
So, and obviously, you over the years you have recorded actual like series of some of your shows and stuff, through Twitch and YouTube and all that stuff. So obviously, a lot of work and planning does go into that. We had talked about the VCAT one as well as the project one. So I guess going back to like the original like showings and stuff, what was it like back then putting that together? Like what were kind of some of the early iterations of that, trying to get, these shows together?
It was more or less just trying to get people and to play. Obviously it was a lot harder. I was kind of more nomadic than just trying to get anyone I could. Kind of going on to public or friends plus instances, or gathering friends or anyone who would be interested, just asking, hey, I want to help test a game show. Now that was also evident early on before I actually posted my first YouTube video. But when I eventually did post my first YouTube video, I had some good friends. I had Antron, I had Adzy Slayer, TFM Johnny, and I even had Spork of Love in the audience, all very good friends of mine. And then I had other people and other good friends play the game as well. Other games eventually, like Sail the Century. I had more Press Your Luck. I had Family Feud. Eventually it became more friends, more affiliated with the game show communities over time as they're more regulars. But I'm always looking for new talent and new players to join us and to be part of our videos or even our shows and our events.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a long time of, all this production stuff, to say the least, right? There's obviously a lot when it comes to all that. And we actually, so the next question, we kind of you kind of briefly mentioned it before, when it comes to like working on things. So you are also working on a film, I believe, if I remember correctly, called the Great Game Show, As I'm trying to look at my notes
Story.
because brains are the great game show story. So
that
I guess
is kind of in the works. So it's kind of stalled as well because I'm trying to get new content done for it and also have a lot of our priorities in mind. That is kind of like an auto documentary reflecting, it's not really about myself as it more is about the passion that is attached to not just me, but everyone I've influenced. It of course reflects the story and how I've kind of come far, my ups and my downs, people I've made and people I've lost. But it's also about just the game show history in general. And especially in this game and who really looks up to us and who we've inspired and who we've worked with. And it's going to be a really big project.
No, I mean, that's fair, and obviously, making the trailers for that and stuff, getting people hyped for it. It's definitely a crazy thing, because you've been doing it for so long. Obviously, there's a lot to tell, when it comes to this documentary, when it comes to that, so I guess kind of one of the questions I wanted to ask, what kind of led you to want to, well, I guess this is kind of a weirder phrased question. What kind of led you to want to make the documentary? Like, what kind of sparked the interest of having one, I guess is what I was trying to say.
So the desire to make the documentary was more like a self-reflection, kind of almost as if also an anniversary upcoming. Because I started VRChat in January of 2018. I thought I started a bit earlier than that, but it's actually that day when I started on Steam. I think January 22nd, 2018 is when I officially started through Steam, because of course I didn't have an official VRChat account. I didn't play any other way. I played through desktop and still mostly do. But when it came to like waiting like 7 or 8 years for that moment, eventually I reflected like, how far have I come since then? And what story can I tell and how I can inspire other people to do what I do within that time frame? So that's what kind of inspired me to create the documentary and get it going.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's obviously, I full-heartedly think there definitely is a lot to tell because you've been doing it for so long, and going back from that era until now, going through different iterations of things, not only with your stuff but also VRChat as well, going through all the different eras of VRChat between that time and now. A lot has changed. A lot has definitely changed.
Indeed. A lot has changed.
It continues to change, to say the least.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah.
It's definitely a crazy thing, this VR platform known as VRChat.
Yes.
But it has helped literally hundreds of people through multiple means, whether it's, making careers off, creating things in Unity, or, content creation, or whatever the case may be, and that's kind of,
I'd say thousands.
Yeah, I would easily say, yeah, thousands would definitely be more fitting there.
Yeah.
It's definitely crazy. And now, as the years have progressed, VRChat's finally getting to the side of like, okay, how can we help these creators? How can we, get people, to keep doing what they love and helping them along the way, with the implementation of creator economy and, having direct means of contact through like the community leaders. It's definitely, as somebody who's done or has both, it's definitely a crazy thing, to say the least. Being able to have access to these, it's very helpful and very inspiring, and makes people want to create more and keep doing what they do. Obviously, with your stuff, you've been doing it for so long. I guess one of the questions I want to ask, because obviously, like you had said, you had ups and downs and stuff. So I guess one of the questions, like, have you ever experienced burnout during these stages, making all these worlds and, continuing to do what you do?
Mostly not really burnout, but more or less just overwhelming stress, because I haven't really felt too burned out just by working on my worlds. I'm not really one to go into this in detail, but other people, especially those I've lost contact with, either for falling outs or or even like harsh disagreements or even misunderstandings or even just flat out hate, that really kind of drove me over the edge a few times and kind of made me question whether or not this whole thing was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
that is a common
it's
thing.
been like that. Go ahead. It is a very common thing, especially. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Sorry, yeah, it's okay. All good. Sorry, it's okay. Yeah. So obviously there have been some people and even content creators who have actually kind of threw me away in a sense. It feels like, but it really has hurt. But despite that, the lesson I've learned is that even if you're hurt, as long as you still have the passion, that spark still burns, you get yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going regardless of how bad it hurts at the time. Especially because one thing I've learned since every time that's happened is that we're just human. We make mistakes and we learn from them. And especially if the people who hurt you are not capable of learning from those mistakes, that is not your fault. Because you're moving on, you're doing what you can, you're committed to the passion. So yeah, that, especially because I remember at one point, especially actually during Project Fest, I missed my opportunity to really kind of reflect my booth, and it really hurt. And it really kind of hurt a lot. And obviously it's not on anyone here. It was my own fault, of course, because of course, as sensible people, we take responsibility for our own actions. That is what we do best, especially those who are truly selfless and committed to it, and don't hesitate to put themselves behind certain things, especially behind the passion. And obviously with that, I really felt very bad and felt like shutting things down to make it easy and just kind of relieve a bit of the stress. But then I realized something that wanted to make me keep going. That was that pilot whammy animation I mentioned earlier. It was uploaded to YouTube, that raw pilot whammy tape. And at that moment, I realized a few things. First, it was that talent like this is hard to come by. Talent like this is very scarce. So not a lot of people are able to possess that. And because especially if you give up, in that sense, no one else will have the passion or the energy to do it as well as you. You're the only one who can do it. And second, it was the mission to preserve and protect television history. Because the Game Show Vault, who uploaded those whammy tapes, especially that pilot one, that raw one that has never been seen before in that quality, it has a similar mission as me and my team to preserve and protect television history. Obviously, we do it different ways, but we still do it regardless. And third, it was the people who keep it going. Originally, it was run by Wink Martindale, who was a game show host himself, who hosted Tic-Tac-Dough and Gambit, Debt, Cut and Trivial Pursuit on, I think, Family Channel. It was Family Channel. And he actually died earlier this year in April. And he trusted the Game Show Vault to some of his closest friends. And I believe the message was simple as he was passing and eventually transferring control over of his social media to his friends and fellow Game Show fans. The message was simple. Pass the torch, don't let it burn out, and don't let it fizzle. So that is kind of the message here when it comes to stuff like this. Even if you really feel like shutting down, giving up, or even worse things, there's a lot more in store that you still haven't uncovered. People will not be able to keep up the passion just as well as you can. You're the only one. The one who started it is the one who can really finish it or make it flourish. It's one or the other. And you must make it flourish if you wish to succeed.
No, absolutely. And some sound pieces of advice in there as well. Because obviously there's a lot when it comes to being a creator. It doesn't matter if you make worlds, avatars, or content. There's always ups and downs. We're only human after all.
Indeed, yes. I was about to get to that. So, because whether you make worlds, videos, avatars, TikTok, streams, whatever you do, however you do it, only one thing remains constant among that whole spectrum of VRChat content creation. It's who we are and how we function. We can burn out. We can get high on our successes. We can drop to our low depressions. But we have people to support us when we feel those downs hitting hard. Even if we're high ups, we have people to love us and cheer us on. That's what it's about. It's not just about just who we are. It's about what we do and how we share it. That is a big thing we keep in mind.
100%. No, 1,000% even. It's definitely a crazy thing, when it comes to pretty much everything in that regard. It's at the end of the day, even your biggest content creators out there, not just VRChat, but in general, we're all just human at the end of the day. It's
correct. It's the only real. Forget that. It's the only real kind of species in a sense that's capable of doing stuff like this. Not really anyone else can. Nothing else can. Nothing.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a crazy thing in that regard.
It is, yes.
But yeah, kind of to move on, because we only got a little bit of time left. So
Yeah,
obviously,
correct. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. This is great. It's obviously, when it comes to these things, making all these worlds and stuff, kind of another advice question. So obviously with all the game worlds you've made and, making these 1-to-1 recreations of all these game shows, what's one piece of advice for someone who's maybe interested in creating a game show world, maybe one that's not, available, preferably. But what's kind of a piece of advice you can give for somebody who's maybe interested in creating a game show world like that?
I can give 3 pieces of advice. If my fingers work. Yeah, 3 pieces of advice. First, be passionate about what you're doing. Especially because if you don't know the genre well, odds are it won't work. So you have to be passionate and study it. Second, do your research. Study those sets, those photos, videos, gameplay, anything. That way you understand how it works, how it looks, sounds, plays. That is how you will get far when recreating worlds like I do. So do your research. And third, know how to use the tools. Obviously, it took me a long time to use tools like Unity, SketchUp, the Udon compilers, how to model stuff easily, make the logic work, get those sounds, everything. It takes time. It always does. Nothing happens overnight. Nothing ever happens overnight. But if you take the time to learn how to use the tools, make them work, shape them to your needs, and create something truly amazing with all those steps in mind, you can make something truly extraordinary, as we've all done, like Jar, like Fax Machine, like Owlboy, Spooky Ghost Boo, like myself. We dedicate ourselves to making stuff like this, and we've done so for years. For all future content creators who want to make worlds or avatars, those 3 things are what you need to keep in mind. Research, dedication, and knowledge. Those are the 3 big things to content creation. If you use those tools and knowledge and dedication well, you will go very far in your VRChat content creation career.
No, 1,000,000%. Yes. I highly agree on that.
Yes, I'm sure readers would like to write a check for that.
Man. But yeah, I guess one last question, more of a fun question. Because obviously,
Indeed.
Talking about everything in business and stuff.
Yeah.
So obviously you've seen, a bunch of different game shows over the years. So I gotta ask, in your personal opinion, what is the most underrated game show that you have watched that you think more people should check out? Not necessarily VRChat, but just in general.
That is a tough question. I'm not sure what an underrated show would really be. I'm kind of torn between a couple of them. I think it's a show that I haven't even updated in a while that I think is it's called Sale of the Century. It was originally a show on NBC back in the 60s, actually hosted by Jack Kelly, but it's most known for being revived through Reg Grundy in Australia, then ported back to America in 1983 on NBC again, hosted by the co-host of Card Sharks, Jim Perry, and it lasted for 6 years. And I think that is kind of underrated. Because that was actually my 3rd VRChat Games World, and it hasn't really been touched since. It's still SDK2, it's still out of date. I did try to update at one point, but it kind of stalled. But I think that show, with its rapid fire trivia, its tempting bargains, and a very interesting set of gameplay, and even who even got involved with that show later on, because I know Tim Holland was the all-time winner in America, and its global influence as well, even in Australia and other parts of the world. But I think Sale of the Century is a vastly underrated show. Now, obviously not my favorite. Far from it. That would be press your luck. But Sale of the Century, it being underrated makes it a truly remarkable thing. And I hope to update that again soon.
No, absolutely. And, hopefully many more projects and worlds to come, obviously with all the amazing stuff you create.
Indeed, yes. Especially at VCat.
Yeah, of course. Well, Genesis, thank you so much for coming on. This is a blast to kind of get to learn a little bit more about you and, all the amazing, worlds and stuff you created. This is a blast.
It was an honor to be here, Noved. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. Before we do end things off, I do want to give you a spot to tell the listening audience where they can find you, any links you want on screen in the description. But yeah, tell the people where they can find you.
All right. So for those who are interested in joining my groups, we have a couple Discord servers, but can mostly find them through our game show groups in VRChat. The codes are on screen, but also I can read them off. For the game show communities of VRChat group is GSC VRC.1583. That is the short code. If you punch that into VRChat groups in your game, you can find our server and Discord server very easily. We also have the Game Show Night in VRChat group. That short code is VRGame.9490. Now, one thing you need to know is that you must be a member of both game show groups, preferably for both Discord and VRChat, and must be 18 years or older to participate in our events and be a member. And of course, server etiquette and VRChat terms of service apply. That is a good thing to know and actually a requirement. Also, you can also find me on YouTube, Blue Sky, and Twitch. You can find me under GSGenesis VR on most of them. Sometimes GSGenesis, but for Blue Sky and Twitch, it's GSGenesis VR. So Blue Sky, YouTube, and Twitch links are on the screen or in the description. You can find me there, give me a follow, subscription, or whatever works for you. I also have a bunch of stuff as well I'm planning on later on. But I think that's about all you need to find me with, and especially my friends. We host events in VRChat every Tuesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The content sometimes varies, but it's mostly game shows. But other than that, that is about it. I thank you very much for letting me participate, Noved, on your podcast. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, of course. No, it was a blast to have you on. I'm glad we got to finally sit down. I know we planned it a lot earlier, but life and stuff.
Yeah, it's okay.
But hey,
life always
we made
gets
it
in
happen.
the way.
Yeah, we made it happen.
We did make it happen. Indeed, it does.
Yeah, man. I actually lied. I got one last question before we do end things off.
Oh boy.
So obviously, with certain games like Family Feud and stuff. There's supposed to be surveys of 100, people, whatever the case may be. So do you run those through your community or through your Discord? Like how does one typically do that?
Well, a lot of the content, especially those surveys, are plucked from the actual show or the video games. Millionaire is the big example. We take the questions from the actual show or the board games, or even, especially all from Millionaire, just custom content. Like, sometimes we make up our own questions with our own answers, doing our research, especially in Press Like a Millionaire. But Family Feud, it all comes from the show because they've been tried and true surveys. So we take them from modern or classic eras, especially because we're trying to be more modern because of Steve Harvey, and try to make sure those are up to date with the latest information. And we add new content regularly, as much as we can. But when it comes to content like that, the questions or answers or surveys, whatever they are, we take them from the authentic material and basically try to keep it tried and true, and of course accurate. Now, of course, one thing I should also mention as well is that all the game show worlds are non-profit, fan-made works. We are not affiliated with the IP holders in any way, and do not do so with profit, and we do not want to get in any legal trouble. So it's all fan-made, non-profit work, and we tend to keep it that way.
Of course.
Indeed, yes.
But yeah, obviously, because we are a little bit over time, totally my fault because I wanted to ask that last question.
It's okay.
I was genuinely curious. But of course, all the links will be down in the description below. So make sure to go to that description. Check out GSGenesis, all of his amazing content and his groups as well. But yeah, ladies, gentlemen, everybody inside and outside the ballpark, that has been it for episode 78. 78. Yes. Of the Noved podcast. I want to thank you all one last time for watching, listening, depending on what platform you're on. Comment down below, what is your favorite game show? What is your favorite game show? Comment down below. We'll see what types of opinions or, favorites of all of you listening or watching, depending on the platform. But yeah, I want to thank you all. I think that's everything, I believe. But I want to thank you all so much one last time for watching, listening, depending on what platform you're on. And I will see you Oh, wait, no, of course. If you come back to check out some of the other episodes, why not hit that subscribe button? I somehow forgot to do that bit. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell, all that type of stuff. Yeah, thank you one last time for watching, listening, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care and peace.
Bye, everybody.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Noved.